Hey everyone, I am back. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. I hope that you've had a great week and I hope you've had a great start to the year. It's hard to believe we are already in the month of February. Today is February 1st, or for some of you, February 2nd, depending on where you live in the world. But I also wanted to say happy Black History Month. No matter who you are on the planet, obviously an important month, and I hope you get the opportunity to really learn more and how to support others. Again, no matter what you look like. And thanks so much for those who are starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. As some of you may know, for those of you who are new, by the way, welcome to Mental Health Moment. And for those of you who tune in every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, welcome back. So for those of you who probably already know, this is the first Tuesday of the month, which is a really exciting Tuesday because the first Tuesday of the month on Mental Health Moment is devoted specifically to children's mental health. So again, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, you have friends who have children, or you're an educator, or however you interact with children, this is going to be important. And hi, thanks for those who are still continuing to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. And many of you may have already heard, but there is a national emergency on children's mental health. There's so much that has happened, especially in the past couple of years with COVID, with this pandemic. It is really unfortunately hit our youth very hard. I was reading something that was saying over 140,000 US children have lost a primary or secondary caregiver. We've talked a lot extensively on Mental Health Moment about grief and what that does to you. So imagine being a young child or a teen and having to deal with grief and loss of the person who is taking care of you because of the COVID-19 pandemic, along with all the other stress that it has brought and continues to bring for some families, depending on what's happening in your situation. It's a lot to deal with, right? So today I'm going to give you a couple of things. One is, and hopefully it's not, I think someone said, is it glitching? Hopefully not. I am on the mercy of a hotel Wi-Fi, so hopefully you can hear me clearly. But one of the things I wanted to share with you today is, number one, what signs to look for, so you know when children are struggling emotionally and mentally. And then I'm going to give you some resources of what to do about that. Also, for those of you who didn't tune in the last couple of weeks, just as a reminder, on my YouTube page, what I'm going to do with the videos, I'll put the replays on there, or maybe listen to a replay later. I'll put in the body of the YouTube video, I'll put in the caption, I'll put the resources that I discussed. Because I know some of you said, like, what book did you say? Or what website did you say? And you'll send me a message after. So I'll be sure to put all the resources that I talked to you all about today in there. But as you always know, if you have any other questions after this live or after watching this replay, you can always reach out, drnikishahammond.com, and I'm more than happy to try to get you to the appropriate resources for mental health. And thanks for those who are still starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. So the first thing I want you to think about is, how do you know? How do you know when children are struggling? Because one of the things I really want to share with you as a psychologist, a sad fact is, you can Google all the statistics that you want to about children's mental health. I mean, we have the data, we have the research. However, I will say numbers do lie, because those are the statistics of the identified children who have depression and anxiety and ADHD, and all these sorts of things. There are millions of children, though, throughout the world who have not been identified as having mental health struggles. So unfortunately, even though the numbers are so high, they're not even high enough to show us what is really happening with our youth, which is actually very scary. And I remember even myself as a youth, as a teenager, how scary it was, because I was really having some issues with anxiety, but I didn't even know what was going on with me. I didn't have the language and the understanding to know it was anxiety, right? So I still remember talking to my psychology teacher in high school, Mr. Ivy, I'll never forget. And I was like, I don't know what's happening with me. I'm having problems breathing. I'm having all these thoughts. And I didn't even know they were thoughts. I was like, am I hearing voices? Like, I thought I was going crazy. Like, I did not know. Okay. I was a 16-year-old girl. I didn't know what was going on. And he's like, first he was like, wait, voices like inside your head, outside your head. And I'm like, inside my head. And it's like a mean voice. And it's telling me all this negativity. And he's like, oh, like negative self-talk. And I was like, what's that? Right. So he explained that to me. And he explained different things I could do to calm down my breathing and to work on the anxiety. And thank God that I had him, right, to share those things with me. But there's a lot of kids out there, they don't know what's going on with them. There are kids that, and adults too, but kids that feel like they're dying because they had a panic attack, because they don't know what is happening with them. What does that mean? And you're not going to die, right? It feels like you are, but you're not from a panic attack when your heart is racing, or your palms are sweating, or you're breathing really fast, or your thoughts may be racing, right? And that panic and what happens with that. So the first thing I want to leave, one of the tips I want to leave you with, is that we have to teach our children what is going on with them, because again, a lot of kids don't even know what's happened. They don't know what depression means. They don't know what anxiety means. They don't know necessarily what ADHD is, or many things that are happening to them mentally and physically, because physically sometimes can be a sign of a mental health issue. So one of the things to look out for, there's a lot. I'm going to give you a couple of them, but one of the things to look out for kids is how are they eating and how are they sleeping? Because a lot of times there's kids that they will not eat if they're depressed, if they're anxious, if they can't focus. They are their diet is changing, meaning they don't want to eat dinner, or maybe they don't want to eat lunch. If the little ones, they might not want to eat lunch at school, and you start to hear those types of things. Or the opposite direction. Some kids eat a lot. They have what's called emotional eating, where they are so sad, or they're so anxious, or they can't focus, that they're consuming a lot more calories, and you're like, what is going on? Why are you eating so much? Right? Along with the sadness you may see, along with the nervousness you may see. And remember, you may see this as an adult, and you might even understand yourself. You're like, oh yeah, clearly they're anxious, or clearly they're sad, or they're having behavioral issues. But I'm telling you, because I specialize in children and teens, that most youth, they don't understand what is happening with them, and it's very scary. Not to mention, during these times of their youth are supposed to be when they're learning how to trust what is happening in their lives. They're learning how to trust their environment. COVID-19 did not help with that. Okay. It was a very scary time for us as adults. So imagine for kids what they were experiencing and how scary that was. And thanks so much for those of you starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. We're talking first a couple of things to look out for with kids, because remember, today's episode is all about children's mental health. So again, eating habits, sleeping habits, same thing. Some kids are struggling, a lot of kids actually are struggling to get to sleep. They cannot turn their brain off because they're so anxious about what's going to happen. They're so anxious about going to school. They're so anxious. Are they going to get COVID? They're anxious. What happened to their family member that may have passed away? What happened with the financial stress that's happening in their home? All of these things are affecting their sleep, right? And we know, I can talk for 12 hours, I won't, but what lack of sleep does for your brain, and what that does to them in school, and their behavior and irritability, and the list goes on, right? So it's very important for them to get their sleep, but that's also a sign that something is happening with them. Or again, on the other end, some kids are sleeping way too much because they're so sad and they're so depressed. And so looking at these sort of changes, those are only two things. You can look at their behavior. Usually it can be pretty telling if and you really, your gut of like, they used to be an AB student or ABC student. Now they're failing things. Now they're getting C's and D's and F's. What is happening with them in school? Are they now the class clown when they were more serious? Are they withdrawing more in school and at home? There's a lot of different things to look for. And are they ever expressing that they want to hurt themselves? That Some of those stats went up as well. Again, the identified stats, I will say, because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of kids that try to hurt themselves who never make it to the hospital, who don't tell anyone, um, and are not quote unquote a part of the statistics, but it's happening. So kids are cutting themselves, they're burning themselves, they're talking about hurting themselves. I mean, these are very serious things. And if that is happening with the child that you know, it is imperative to get to a mental health professional. And in some cases, depending on how serious it is, you need to get to the emergency room because it's a very serious thing. It's a very real thing right now, unfortunately, especially with COVID. And thanks so much for those who are still starting to join here. We're talking today about children's mental health and some of the signs, to look for. But also along with that, what to do. So there's a lot I'm going to break down, obviously shortly, briefly, some of the things to do. And as I promised, I'll put the resources in there in the YouTube, on my YouTube page. I'll put it with this video, some of the resources. But one of the things that you can do, obviously, is to reach out to a mental health professional if you have concerns. I completely understand. I've been in this field now as a psychologist in private practice for 13 years. So I get that there is a stigma of mental health treatment. I completely understand, especially for Black and Brown communities, there is a stigma of there's something wrong with my child. I don't want to get my child help. Keep it in the family. Only Jesus can save. I mean, I've heard it all. And while I hope as a society we're moving towards mental health treatment being okay, I strongly encourage you, if a child you know in your life needs to take that step to get treatment, whether it's family therapy, whether it's individual therapy for the child, social skills therapy, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. The sooner the better. I can tell you that as a psychologist, I can tell, I mean, the data shows that, but also I can tell you that unfortunately, a lot of people wait many years to start to get treatment, but the earlier you get treatment and you get some type of intervention for this child, the better the outcomes. It just is. And what I've hate to see is when children suffer unnecessarily. There's so much that, man, I wish I had 3 more hours. There's so much that I have seen, you all, in over a decade working with youth, and it hurts me so much. But there's so much that I have seen that has been preventable. There's so much heartache. There's so much family conflict. There's so much suspensions I've seen. There's so much getting into trouble at school, children's self-esteem being affected. I can go on, and a lot of it is preventable, you all. So that's why I'm sharing this with you, because if we know as a community, right? And I'm honored to be here, by the way, on Mental Health Moment, but it's not about me. It's about, I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but it's about us as a community helping youth, because I'm really passionate about this topic, but it's about us as a community helping youth. So sharing the information that you have, when you're like, you know what? I heard that these things that this child is going through, it actually could be anxiety, or it actually could be sadness, or maybe it's ADHD. Maybe they need to have a psychological evaluation to figure out what's going on with them, right? And we know this information and we share this in our community, and then we take steps to help this child. Again, we're putting them on a path to be more successful. So that's why I'm sharing this information with you. And again, I'll put it in the caption on YouTube, but a couple of good websites for you to go to are, one is helpguide.org. So helpguide.org. Really good. I have used it personally as a psychologist, I think since the beginning of my practice, I don't know, for a really long time, because they have really good information, and not just for children, but also for adults on there, but about what is depression, what is teen depression. They have a really good guide on that. What does that mean? What is anxiety? What can you do at home? Because again, I told you about going to a mental health professional, but not every single person, not every single kid needs therapy, right? Some kids just need some extra help at home, and that's okay. But there's specific things you can do at home, or if you need to take the step to go to a mental health professional, that's on there as well. There's information about ADHD. There's information about how to speak to teachers, what teachers can do. So that website is very thorough with a lot of different mental health issues. So not just depression, anxiety, ADHD, but a whole lot more. So I encourage you to check that out. Again, it's and maybe somebody could put it in the comments, but it's helpguide.org. That's one. Another good resource for you to check out is the American Psychological Association. So it's the American Psychological Association. Also, very good resource. They have a help center with all sorts of articles related to children's mental health. If you are outside of the US, please feel free to reach out to me anytime, drnikishahammond.com, and I will try my best to help you get to a resource outside of the US. I've been to a couple of international conferences, so I'm aware of some other resources that are reputable. But again, you can always send me a direct message on social media or reach out on the website and just say, hey, I live in this country. Can you help me with resources? And I'll do my best to help you, because I know we have a global audience here. One other resource I want to share with you is it's called Nami, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So N as in Nancy, A, M as in Mary, I, NAMI.org. You can go to their site too. I don't think they're international. They may be, I'm not sure, but definitely in the US, throughout the US, they have a lot of different chapters. They have so much information related to children's mental health on there as well. So feel free to go to that site as well. Somebody said helpguide.org is a good resource. It's a great resource. Someone else said some communities just don't believe in mental health. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. So it's interesting because when I do media interviews, I always get asked about some of the symptoms of different mental health issues, and sometimes statistics come up. And one of the things I want to stress, if you don't remember anything from today's mental health moment related to children's mental health, every single child on the planet has mental health. Every single child has mental health. Now, it is a spectrum though. Some children are thriving. They're doing amazing. They have good coping skills. Life is good. Okay. On the way other end of the spectrum, there are children that are falling apart. They are struggling mentally and emotionally. They do not understand what is going on with them. Maybe there's been some type of trauma in their life. Maybe they have a mental health disorder. Maybe things are happening that are difficult for them in their home, family conflict. There's a whole spectrum, right? And everything in between. But that hurts my heart actually, and I do know that's true. Yes, some communities don't believe in mental health or mental health treatment or therapy. But here's the thing: therapy is one piece, right, of it. But there's also so many other things that can be done. So schools, for example, schools absolutely have an obligation, especially when children have a mental health disorder. They have an obligation to provide modifications in their lesson plans or in their curriculum sometimes, or basically help the child to function better in school. So schools have things that they can do, many things. And again, I'll put some resources as well in the YouTube page about that. There's a lot of good resources. And helpguide.org also has good resources on that. Another thing is to think about the one other thing to really think about is if maybe you have a family member that's like, I don't believe in therapy. I don't want to take my child to therapy, that sort of thing. This child deserves to have someone in their life that they feel cares about them, which may or may not, unfortunately, it may or may not be a caregiver. There are children in difficult situations where their caregivers are not giving them the best treatment, attention, and meeting their emotional needs. But someone else in that child's life can help them. So I've heard many stories, many touching stories from youth that have said a coach helped them, or a teacher helped them, or their uncle helped them, or their big brother or big sister helped them, from the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. I mean, the list goes on and on, but they have to be connected to someone that cares about them, that can save their, literally can save their life. Hopefully a mental health professional is also included, but if not, for whatever reason, there has to be someone that is connected in that child's life if we're talking about saving youth and helping youth. And yep, someone asked a really good question. Providing information can help break the stigma. It absolutely can, because and I'm going to get to your question in a minute too, about the counseling, but providing information can absolutely help with the stigma, because sometimes what I've seen is that some parents or teachers or whomever, because they don't necessarily understand how anxiety can manifest or depression can manifest, for example, for youth, there have been assumptions made about kids where they say, I think they're just being lazy. I think they're just acting out. I think they're just having a behavior problem. Come to find out, no, they're actually clinically depressed and cannot do these things. But then they get treatment and you see, wait a minute, now I see my child again. Now they are functioning and thriving, right? Or they're so anxious, or they're dealing with trauma. There's so many different layers to what's happening with children. So absolutely, when the education is there, it really can help communities. That's why I do Mental Health Moment with you all every single week, because it really can help communities to understand what is happening and with our youth and how to help them, which is so important, especially right now. Someone else said, how can you help them when they refuse counseling? So I'm not sure if you're talking about the parent or the child. I'll speak for the child. Sometimes, I wouldn't say the little kids, but like the teens are like, oh, I don't want to go to therapy, is not cool or whatnot. And so back when I used to do therapy at the beginning of my career, what was interesting is a lot of teens, I would say, okay, let's just try this for a couple sessions. Like the first 3 sessions or so to see, right? And the majority of them, once they realize, because there's this like false idea of what therapy even is. I hate when I see in movies sometimes what people think therapy is, and I'm like, no, it doesn't even have to look like that. But anyhow, so teens think that too. They're like, I saw this, what therapy is on a movie, and it's like, it's not really necessarily like that. So anyhow, after a couple conversations, sometimes when they see what therapy really is, and how it could benefit them, most teens would continue into therapy. If a teen was absolutely so opposed where they refused to do counseling, I would say, you know what? I would give the parent tips of, sometimes the parents would come in for therapy themselves, and do some type of parent education to help their child because their child wasn't ready for therapy yet. And that's okay. We can't force people, especially the teenager. You can't force a 17-year-old to sit there and you must talk to me like that. That's just not going to work. But there's other ways. There's still other ways to help that child. And again, mentoring. Some kids don't want to talk. There was a lot of kids that I used to work with, especially the little ones and the middle schoolers. They would play games. We would do play therapy. I don't know if you all have heard of that. Gameplay therapy and those types of things where they were still learning the skills, but they were having fun while they were having the therapy experience, right? So, and there's a lot of different type of therapies. So not everybody wants to sit, what you see on the movie, sit on a couch and talk about their childhood. That's not all that therapy is. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, especially with kids. Yep. Someone said anxiety and stress in children is often mislabeled as troubled or autism by public school districts. Yes, which is why at this point in my career, one of my specialty areas is psychological evaluations, because too often times we take 5 or 10 minutes to look at a child and be like, okay, this is what's going on with them. I will tell you, as someone who has tested hundreds of children, that is not always the case. What you look at a child and think is going on in 5 to 10 minutes, I promise you, a lot of times that's not the real issue. There's a lot of kids that are not diagnosed properly. There are a lot of children that have learning disabilities, which look like they're being lazy or acting out. They are not appropriately placed in schools. There's a lot of kids who have ADHD undiagnosed, or ADHD diagnosed and it's not ADHD, right? So there's a lot with that, which is why it's so important to make sure our children are getting the proper care, make sure they're getting the proper diagnosis, if a diagnosis even exists, and making sure that the education system is doing what they need to do too, which probably needs to be a whole nother mental health moment. But so those are some of the tips today, and thank you all again for some of the comments. I think, oh, someone asked national. I think you're asking, oh, the resource. Yes. The other resource was National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. So N is in Nancy, A, M is in Mary, I. That was a resource I talked about before, along with American Psychological Association and helpguide.org. And there's so many other resources, but I just want to give you a couple today, and I'll give you a couple more and another mental health moment. And like I said, I'll put it in the YouTube caption, so you'll have all the websites, and there's a couple more, but I'll put it all in there because I know it's a lot right now. I'll put it all in the caption area. Oh, one other thing before I go for today, if you're in the Texas area, I believe it's Denton is the city, Texas area, on Thursday, February 24th, I will be speaking at a conference there, the transition or Texas Transition Conference, on transition planning and mental health for families. So I will, on my Facebook page, Dr. Nikisha Hammond Facebook page, in the calendar area, you can get all the information. If you're in the area, it'll be an in-person event, but I'm just going to go into more details about mental health and a guide for families. So I will be there. And then I'll also start updating that calendar because I'll be doing some virtual conferences throughout the year as well, and in person. So I know this audience lives all over the country and some out of the country, but again, I'll let you know, hopefully, if you're in the area, you can come to the conference and I can meet some of you all who tune in all the time, or maybe you're new, which is okay too. But just wanted to let you know that. And also, for those of you who are just joining right now, maybe joining the live a little bit late, every first Tuesday of the month will be devoted to children's mental health. And then the other Tuesdays are going to be a regular mental health moment. But I wanted to make sure that we discussed that because it's been a lot. It's been a lot on the poor kiddos, and our numbers are showing it. And as I mentioned earlier, numbers are not even showing what the reality is. There's a lot of kids that are hurting right now. So I hope, again, you take this information, you know some of the warning signs. There's a lot more, but again, so I don't talk for 3 hours today, I'm going to give you some of the resources to do some homework a little bit and get more information, print some of that stuff out, share it with people that you know. And if you all have any questions whatsoever related to mental health, or you need any resources, please feel free to reach out on drnikishahammond.com, or on social media. Any social media, you can reach out and send me a direct message, and I will do my best to get you to the appropriate resource in your area. And I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day. Again, happy Black History Month, and take care of yourselves. Be blessed. And I'll see you all next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page and YouTube Live and LinkedIn Live. So I'll see you all next time. Bye, y'all.
Sorry, I'm still not sure.